Hey kids, raised ink press. I'm Andy the Crumpet, and today we're going to be doing a short story, a little bit different. Um, Short story still important, if you want to get your name out there as a writer. A good way to do that is to punch up a few short stories, get them out to competitions, magazines, journals, and you never know where it might lead. I am always inspired by the likes of Philip K. Dick, Stephen King, Isaac Asimov, many great short story writers out there. We've got Australian short story writers. I can think of them off the top of my head, but why bother when you want to hear The Dandy? This is a short story by Andrew Spencer. Alright, it begins. The text message read, "It's the Dandy. Call me." "Are you sure it was Tug?" Junk asked Tramp as they sat on the numbing sandstone steps of the city church. "Last night," Tramp replied. "He was with the Dandy." Tramp flicked the cherry from his smoke and tucked the dumper away for later. "He sent me this." Junk showed Tramp the message on his phone. Tramp squinted as he read the cracked screen. "I knew it," Tramp said, his face twisting sour. He shook his head. "Shoulda never made that score alone." Junk's legs jittered. "You don't believe the rumors, do you?" Tramp gave a solemn single nod. "Never score from the Dandy. Never." "I gotta find him, Tramp," Junk pleaded. He knew Tramp was holding back. The pair sat quietly for a moment. "Find Jasmine," Tramp finally grumbled. "She's a bloody crossroads. Nothing passes by her unnoticed." "Thank you," Junk said. As he stood up, Tramp grabbed Junk's wrist. "Don't drag her into this," he warned. "I won't," Junk said. "One last thing," he asked. "Can I borrow the naloxone, just in case Tug's OD'd?" Tramp rolled his eyes. "You young fellas." He dug through his bag, then tossed Junk a grey tube similar to an EpiPen. "Let's hope you don't need it." "Let's," Junk said, as he set out to find a crossroad. Junk strode into the sunlight, glad to escape the shadows that had kept him feeling cold and sick. The crisp air made his nose drip, while a sense of urgency drove Junk's aching body forward as he checked the local hangouts. Nothing. On a whim, Junk checked the methadone clinic. There he found Jazz reclined out on a nearby bench. She was lazing like a cat in the sun. "Jazz," Junk gently shook her shoulder. "Fuck off," Jazz groaned, then, bursting awake, she yelled, "Don't never touch me without permission. Never, ever." She spat the words of all the vitriol of someone awoken from a comfy dream. "It's me, Junk," he said, stepping back while Jazz caught her bearings. "What do you want?" she seethed. "It's Tug," Junk started, only to be cut off. "Why do you even bother with him?" Jazz grumbled. "If I know my ex, he's passed out in his own puke somewhere." Jazz lit a smoke. "Want one?" "No thanks," Junk said, handing Jazz his phone. "Read this." Jazz read the message, shielding her eyes from the sun. She didn't look impressed. "The Dandy." Jazz took a contemplative drag on her smoke, her brow furrowed in decision. "Yeah, I know him." "Know where I can find him?" Desperation crept into Junk's voice. "Tug wouldn't bail on me. He's a fucking junkie, Junk." "So?" pleaded Junk, He's also a decent human being. You, of all people, should know that. Jazz was silent for a few seconds. Look, she said, that dandy's a pervert. What he tried to do to me, I don't want to remember. He's sick. Jasmine's expression told Junk that she did not want to talk any further. Please, Jazz, Junk said, all puppy dog-eyed. Tug's in trouble. Fine. Jazz stubbed out her smoke and flicked the butt at Junk. The abandoned pub in Frost Lane, 3rd floor, looked for the blacked out windows. Thank you, Jazz, Junk said. Jazz shot him a wry smile, and with that, Junk set out to find the pub. Junk was dope sick. He rugged his overcoat tight round himself, even though he just power walked to the alley. Sweat made his eyes sting, his body ached, but his needs demanded he continue. Frost Lane was a narrow corridor cluttered with broken white goods and trash piled on top of rubbish. A makeshift path weaved its way into the shadows. Junk started down the alley, thankful to be out of the sun's heat. As he continued along the dim row, a chill returned to his bones. Junk wrestled with his courage as unnaturally large rats darted between his legs and primordial cockroaches crawled the urine-soaked walls. Junk was ready to retreat when he noticed the pastel patterns of Tug's hideous one-of-a-kind windbreaker. It was stuffed unceremoniously into an overflowing bin. Junk had given him plenty of shtick about it. He knew Tug would never part with it voluntarily. Junk sent a text to Tramp. Frost Lane. Find Jazz. No Tug. Junk clambered over the bottlenecks of broken glass bins and busted milk crates. Ahead, he saw a pyramid of trash piled upside a rusted downpipe, above a slim window that lent access to the 1st floor. Junk surveyed the climb. The 1st and 2nd floor windows were boarded up, spare that one frosted glass rectangle. It wouldn't be easy. Junk fingered his pocket gingerly, a nervous habit. He felt the naloxone tube and thought of Tug. He looked up again. The 3rd floor was clearly inhabited. Slung across the windows, black curtains waved invitingly. Junk mounted the teetering makeshift ladder. His hands shook with the need for dope. He told himself he was there to help his friend, yet it was the sickness that spurred him forward. As Junk neared the top, he noticed the strong scent of incense masking something rancid in the air. Reluctantly, Junk shimmied through the window on his thin belly. He tumbled into the darkness, landing face down in a urinal trough. Like a cat near water, Junk launched himself across the room, spluttering and spitting at the wet stench. Junk put his sleeve to his mouth. He'd stayed in the worst of the worst hovels. Still, he had never smelt the ripe scent of rotting like he did now. Junk gathered his bearings. He could see a row of mouldy sinks, the mirrors broken into the basins like mouths choking on teeth. Junk's footsteps crunched in the eerie silence. His nostrils tensed at the mix of death and incense smoke. He snuck across the broken tiles and poked his head into the main corridor. Candles burned in rows along the walls, making ancient wax stalactites. The timber floor was layered in dust and clearly showed a well-worn path. Junk followed the candles along the hall, up 2 flights of steps. His nerves were beginning to falter. The desire for dope was still strong, but the voice of logic begged him to leave. Junk reached the 3rd floor. "Hello?" he whispered, afraid to call out. The dust trail led to a heavy door. Light flickered on the other side. Junk pulled a small knife from his jacket. Then he made his way into the room. What he saw before him filled Junk with dread. On a low coffee table, beside a freshly stoked fireplace, sat a brick of dope with a dagger stuck in the top. Fresh needles lay in rows on the smooth timber surface. The air was light and pleasant. The room, or what Junk could see of it, was clean and comfy. Junk slipped quietly over to the brick. His thoughts of Tug now postponed. He dipped his finger into the powder. It was dope, all right. Junk wiped his nose on his sleeve and realized how sick he'd become. Miracles don't happen to junkies, he thought. Then he thought of Tug, standing right where he stood now. Then he thought, fuck it. Junk started to mix up a shot, justifying to himself that it would help him find Tug. Junk entered autopilot. The ritual hunger had taken over. Junk hovered with the needle just above his favourite vein. He could almost taste the bliss, but before he drew blood, a superstitious sensation stayed his hand. Junk capped the needle and put it in his pocket. Wide-eyed, he searched, suddenly certain he was not alone. Outside the arc of firelight, the room dissolved into oblivion. Junk willed himself to call out, but his tongue and lips refused to cooperate. Then, like some occult magic, the candles lit themselves, one after another, across the room. They uncovered the secrets of the darkness. Junk saw Tug in the chair. His eyes were open, but he was clearly dead. A needle hung out of bluish, shriveled skin. The body looked wrong, almost dehydrated, freeze-dried. Tug, you idiot, Junk whispered as he moved closer. He'd seen his fair share of ODs. It never got any easier. Junk thought to check Chug's pulse when a voice stopped him. He's dead, it said. Junk turned to see the dandy standing by the door, blocking the door. It's been 75 years since someone has refused my offering. The dandy spoke casually. The fuck? Junk spat back, gesturing to Tug's body. He's dead. Yes. Quite unfortunate for him, I assure you. He died happy. And you? You didn't help him? Oh, sighed the dandy. I helped him. I can help you too, if you like. Junk wrung his fists against his temple. Tug, shit, man. Junk tried to form a plan. His mind was foggy. Young man, you seem to have some stresses. Surely you wouldn't prefer to use that shot? Maybe fix that leaking nose of yours? Junk felt the needle in his pocket. How did you know? It's a long story, if you'll let me explain. And Tug? What about him? Junk said. What about him? He's all shriveled up like a bloody vampire sucked him dry. Junk pointed to the husk that was his friend. The vampire? Don't you have an active imagination? Come, sit, sit, sit. The dandy emphasized the directive, and Junk found himself unable to hold his own weight. Suddenly, the full force of dope sickness hit him, and Junk slumped into the closest chair. Don't fall into the brick. It's quite expensive. Junk eyed the dandy. He looked as pale and sickly as any junkie, yet his clothes and attitude said different. His casual dominance was far more disturbing than Jazz had warned. Junk sat opposite the dandy, who poured himself a glass of thick red wine, but offered Junk none. You may dip from the brick, but the wine is mine. Ha ha, that rhymes. The dandy's eccentric chuckle put Junk's street senses on high alert. Thanks, but no thanks, Junk said nervously. But I insist. I must insist. Junk felt the sensation again, like an itch in the center of his brain. I truly do, the dandy said, wiping the crimson from his lips with a napcloth. Then suddenly, Junk could not fight his addiction. All the horrible symptoms of withdrawal hit him at once. So overpowering was the sickness that Junk hallucinated. He swore the dandy's face morphed into something insidious, not of this world. Take the shot, the voice in his head repeated. Take the shot. Over and over, louder and louder. Then his hand reached in his pocket. The needle. He could not fight himself. Junk found a vein, pulled back the plunger. As he did, Junk saw the dandy's eyes ignite. They were the eyes of a predator. Then the dope hit. Junk felt a soft blow to his heart, then nothing. His vision dimmed and he slid off the chair. The last thing Junk saw before all went black was the dandy, smiling, his sharp teeth stained by the wine. Junk awoke to a burning pain at his wrists. As he came to, he realized he was splayed out on his back, tied to a bedhead. A plastic mattress protector crinkled beneath him. In the darkness corner of the room, Junk could make out a dark form hunched over another. He could hear a wet suckling sound and had a fair idea of what it was, although he refused to believe that it was Tug. You two were friends. I can taste it. The dandy made his way over to the bed, the blood that stained his face confirming any misunderstandings. You may be wondering why you're tied up. Junk said nothing. The dandy straddled Junk's hips, observing his impotence. No words? That's okay. The dandy whispered into Junk's ear. Not many do. Let me tell you a story. It might help you to understand. Junk groaned as the dandy's words appeared as memory pictures in his head. Nosferatu, the immortal dead. I didn't believe it either. Then I was turned by a Nosferatu travelling on the Mir in the year 1798, an opium transport ship. I was an addict working for my lust. I was addicted when I was turned. I found out very quickly that blood alone could not satiate this wretched curse. No, I yearned only for the blood opium. For centuries I have sought nourishment for my cravings. I have suffered hunger and sickness for decades, adapting and learning. You junkies and I have a lot in common, you know. We're active at night. We're pale, sickly looking. We dress in dark clothes and we are powerless to stop ourselves in the face of such euphoric torture. I will drink you, but I will not kill you. I am lonely, and you harbor the strength needed for the change. You will be kept comfortable, fed, and eventually you will call me master. Junk remained silent as the dandy lowered himself. He lifted Junk's shirt and licked at his navel. I can taste it in your pores. Junk fought against the narcotic sedation, nodding in and out of consciousness. Junk heard the dandy loosen his belt. He felt a pulling and a tugging as his pants were lowered. Junk felt a pressure, a suckling. The dandy had found a vein in his nether regions, and used it like a straw. Time was lost to Junk. He floated in a semi-lucid stupor. The dandy's dope was strong. Junk was abruptly snapped out of his daydream by the sounds of familiar voices crashing and yelling. Junk heard Jazz screaming for help. Before he could doubt his ears, the dandy kicked open the door. He dragged an unconscious Jazz behind him. "Fast food delivery," the dandy said. "Thanks for the loan of your phone." He dumped Jazz on the bed, then turned and left the room. Junk heard more crashing from deeper within the building. "Jazz, wake up," Junk said, using his knees to rock her. "Wake up." Jasmine stirred. "Junk?" Jazz asked, surprised to see him trussed up. "Help me," Junk urged. "Quick, before he comes back." Jazz moved with the skill and stealth of a street thief. She had the ropes loosened in seconds. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Help me. Tramp's out there." She pointed to the heavy door. "Shit," Junk murmured as he pulled up his pants and rubbed feeling back into his wrists. "We've got to help him," Jazz demanded. "We will, but how?" "Why are you here?" Junk asked. "You sent a text to Tramp and me. The text said come here, that there was a mountain of dope just waiting for us. We didn't believe it, but with Tug and all, we came to check it out." Jazz and Junk snuck over to the door. They were just about to creep into the hall when the door flew open from the force of the dandy's boot. The dandy dragged Tramp by his long, white hair, ignoring his pleas for mercy. When the dandy noticed the empty bed, he launched Tramp across the room with superhuman strength. Tramp landed unconscious by the heavily curtained window. The dandy slammed the door. "You think you can hide?" he growled. The dandy's eyes met Junk's. He ignored Jazz as she skidded over to check on Tramp. "Junk," the dandy chuckled. "I've tested you. I know you better than you do. I wonder, can you feel it yet? Do you understand my gift?" "This," he said, pointing to Junk's friends, "is the ultimate rush." Junk knew what the dandy meant. He had crumbled under the pleasure of the brick. He knew what hell he had passed through, and Junk had a fair idea of what hell was to come. Junk looked to Tramp and Jazz cowering in the corner. He nervously fingered his pocket. "Okay, show me," Junk resigned. The dandy smiled. "I knew you couldn't resist." The dandy took Junk's hand and led him over to his friends. "If you need me to kill them first, I can," the dandy cooed gently. "No," Junk said as he gazed down on his scrappy comrades. "I'm not afraid to kill." Then Junk reached into his pocket. He felt the naloxone tube. Without a heartbeat between movements, Junk plunged the needle into the dandy's neck and delivered the whole life-saving dose. The dandy howled in agony as the naloxone stripped the opiates from his dead blood. The scuffle was quick. Junk tackled the dandy. The pair lost their footing and fell forward, through the black velvet curtain, through the window, and out into the midday sun. The dandy howled as the sunlight struck his pale skin after almost 3 centuries. Junk felt a sensation like bad sunburn. As they fell, the dandy withered away like burning newspaper, his skin leafing off in flakes. Junk landed in the alley, showered by broken glass and ash. Junk woke to Tramp and Jazz shaking him. "We got it, let's go." Tramp secured the brick of dope into the breast pocket of his coat. Jazz pulled Junk to his feet. "You good?" she asked. Yeah, let's bounce." Junk could feel the sun eating into his flesh. The trio left the alley and burst back into the thriving heart of the city. People bustled by, taking no notice of 3 bums scurrying back to their hovel. When they arrived at the squat, Tramp and Jazz mixed up a taste to take the edge off. They quickly fell into a narcotic slumber. Junk watched over his friends. He had no urge to use the needle, yet He could not pull his gaze from the throats of his sleeping companions. Junk ran his tongue over the sharp points of his canine teeth. He could smell the dope in their blood. Maybe just a taste, Junk said to himself. That was The Dandy by yours truly, Andrew Spencer, here at Raised Ink Press, where we endeavour to bring you new and exciting stories, poetries and updates from the writing world and community. Very, very lonely thing being a writer, so let's all get together. Let's write together. Let's make stories happen. Raised Ink Press, thanks for listening. Catch you next time. Peace.